This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. First, the headlines. Iran's supreme leader again pledges retaliation against Israel. China, fire in residential building kill 5 people. Italy, search continues after blasts kill 3 workers. United States, Japanese Prime Minister visits Washington. Australia, health experts call for sugar reduction in drinks. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei again promised to retaliate against Israel over the killings of Iranian generals in the strike on its consulate in Syria. Khamenei spoke Wednesday at a prayer ceremony in Tehran celebrating the first day of the Eid al-Fitr holiday and the end of the Muslim holy fasting month of Ramadan. He said last week's attack on Iran's consulate in Damascus, widely blamed on Israel, was akin to an attack on Iranian territory. The evil regime must be punished, and it will be punished, he added. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz appeared to respond, posting on social platform X in both Farsi and Hebrew, "If Iran attacks from its territory, Israel will respond and attack in Iran." The strike on April 1st killed 12 people, including 7 Iranian Revolutionary Guard members, 4 Syrians, and a Hezbollah militia member. Israel has not acknowledged its involvement, though it has been bracing for an Iranian response to the attack, which marked a significant escalation in their long-running shadow war. Iran supports anti-Israeli militant groups like Hamas, who are battling Israeli forces in the Gaza Strip, as well as the Lebanese Hezbollah. An Israeli airstrike hit a home in central Gaza on Tuesday evening, killing at least 11 people, including 7 women and children, hospital officials said. After the strike hit in the town of Zoraida, Associated Press footage showed one man carrying the limp body of a little girl and laying her with the bodies of other dead children on the floor at the main hospital in nearby Deir al-Balar. Hospital officials said the dead included 5 children and 2 women. The strike came as the Israeli military withdrew its forces from the southern city of Khan Yunis this week, ending a month-long ground assault that left large parts of the city in ruins. Still, airstrikes have continued in the past days, including in Gaza's southernmost city of Rafah, where Israel says it plans to launch its next ground assault. Israel shot down a drone over the Red Sea overnight in what the military described as the first deployment of its naval Iron Dome missile defense system. The military said that a covert warship shot down the drone as it flew east over waters near the southern Israeli city of Eilat. The military released grainy aerial footage of the missile making contact with an aircraft. It was not immediately clear who was directing the drone. Yemen's Houthi rebels have been conducting near-daily attacks on commercial and military ships in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, launching drones and missiles from rebel-held areas of Yemen. The Israeli defense system, called the Sea Dome, is a naval version of the Iron Dome, which has been used to shoot down rockets fired from the Gaza Strip for the past decade. Foreign Minister Israel Katz says Israel is preparing a ban on products from Turkey after Ankara announced it was restricting exports to Israel. Turkey said earlier Tuesday it is restricting exports of dozens of products to Israel, including aluminum, steel, construction products, and chemical fertilizers. It said it would continue the measures until Israel declares a ceasefire and allows the uninterrupted flow of aid to Gaza. Katz said in a post on X, formerly Twitter, that Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is sacrificing the economic interests of his citizens for his support of Hamas. Relations between Turkey and Israel have been frosty for years, although trade ties between the two countries are strong. NATO member Turkey is among the strongest critics of Israel's military actions in Gaza. Erdogan has repeatedly called for an immediate ceasefire and accused Israel of committing genocide in its military campaign in Gaza. The Israeli Foreign Ministry had no additional comment. A fire in a large, mostly residential building in Hong Kong on Wednesday morning killed at least 5 people and left another 36 injured. Some 250 residents were rescued from the new Lucky House in Hong Kong's Jordan neighborhood, and the fire was extinguished. The Fire Services Department said that the fire began on the first and second floors of the 16-story building, where a gym and licensed guest rooms were located. More investigation was needed into the cause of the fire, officials said. The 5 who died were apparently trying to escape the building. The new Lucky House has 200 units and was built in 1964. Hong Kong's chief executive, John Lee, expressed his condolences to victims' families and said that the relevant departments were instructed to provide assistance to all those affected by the fire. Chinese leader Xi Jinping met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov Thursday in a sign of mutual support and shared opposition to Western democracies amid Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. We would like to express our highest appreciation and admiration for the successes that you have achieved over the years, and above all, over the last decade under your leadership, Lavrov told Xi, according to Russian media. We are sincerely pleased with these successes, since these are the successes of friends, although not everyone in the world shares this attitude and are trying in every possible way to restrain the development of China. In fact, just like the development of Russia, Lavrov said, Russia's growing economic and diplomatic isolation has made it increasingly reliant on China, its former rival for leadership of the communist bloc during the Cold War. In past decades, the two have closely aligned their foreign policies, held joint military exercises, and sought to rally non-aligned states in groupings such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Lavrov held a news conference earlier Tuesday with his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi, at which they reaffirmed solidarity in international affairs. Lavrov said Russia and China oppose any international events that do not take Russia's position into account. He said Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's so-called peace formula was completely detached from any realities. Zelensky has called for the withdrawal of Russian forces and the return of all occupied Ukrainian territory, but it is heavily reliant on support from the U.S., where the Republican Party majority in the House of Representatives has been holding up a new military aid package. China and Russia are each other's most important diplomatic partners, both holding permanent seats on the United Nations Security Council and working together to block initiatives by the U.S. and its allies to spread democratic values and human rights from Venezuela to Syria. Myanmar's military has begun basic training at military bases and schools across the country for draftees called up under the country's recently activated conscription law, state-run media reported on Tuesday. The authorities activated the conscription law in February in a bid to replenish the ranks that have been depleted in nationwide battles against ethnic minority, armed groups, and armed pro-democracy resistance forces opposed to military rule. The struggle began when the army seized power from the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi in February 2021. Over the past 5 months, the army has lost territory in northern Shan State and in Rakhine State in the west and is undergoing attack elsewhere. It appeared this week that it may also lose the importance of training. In Mayawadi, in Kayin State on the border with Thailand, opening ceremonies for trainings were held in various regional commands and military schools in Mon and Shan states and Tanin Thari, Magwe and Mandalay regions, as well as in the capital, Nay Pyi Taw, the state-run newspaper reported Tuesday. It said the first batch of trainees were those who voluntarily reported to the army after the military government sent letters summoning them. The conscription law's activation has created fear, anxiety, and defiance among young people and their parents. Some are leaving the country, while others are fleeing to border areas controlled by ethnic minorities or joining resistant groups. Independent Myanmar media reported Tuesday that a few young people staged brief protests against conscription at 3 locations in Yangon, the country's largest city. The protests on Monday were carried out as flash mobs to evade attacks or arrests by the authorities. Under the law, men aged 18 to 35 and women 18 to 27 can be drafted into the armed forces for 2 years. The military has said about 40 million men and women of the total 56 million population of the country are eligible for military service, and it will draft 5,000 people at a time and up to 60,000 people a year. Evading conscription is punishable by 3 to 5 years in prison and a fine. You are watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We return after this break.
People into the country illegally. That is amazing.
Honorable
you human trafficker.
Honorable they are not picking our calls. They made up their mind.
So no agreement with the EU, but
Every day our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics.
Nobody's ambition is what the blood.
I have fought very firmly. Natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody, and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today.
across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains. Through the Sahara, we bring on-the-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Now the rest of our stories. Search and rescue operations were underway on Wednesday at a hydroelectric plant close to the northern Italian city of Bologna. Devastating blast killed at least 3 workers, injured 5, and left 4 missing. Dozens of firefighters and drivers continued operations overnight following the massive explosion on Tuesday afternoon that rocked the plant about 40 meters below the water, causing the collapse of parts of the structure and flooding. Rescuers said Wednesday they had few hopes to find the 4 missing alive. We are working but with a few hopes of finding missing people alive. The scenario we are facing doesn't give us this impression, said Luca Cari, a spokesman for Italian firefighters. We are working in very complex and difficult situations. The floor hit by the explosion was dry and now has 50 centimeters of water. We are reconsidering the intervention and evaluation safety considerations, Curry added. The explosion at power company Enel's Barghi plant south of Bologna happened during maintenance work and collapsed part of the 9-story underground structure, sparking a fire and flooding at wide depths. The prefect of Bologna, Attilio Visconti, said a fire broke out when a turbine exploded on the 8th floor below the surface, flooding the floor below. According to the first reconstructions of the accident by witness and survivors, the blast happened during a testing operation that involved about 15 workers and almost killed employees of 3 external companies hired by Enel. The 3 men who died in the explosion were identified as workers aged between 35 and 73, local media reported. Local prosecutors are expected to launch a probe Wednesday. Marco Massinara, the mayor of the nearby town of Camugnano, said the structure was a historic power plant for us, providing jobs for many families. An explosion caused by an alleged drone attack at Europe's largest nuclear plant in Ukraine on Tuesday posed no direct threat to its safety, but understood the extremely serious situations at the facility that repeatedly has been caught in the war's crossfire, the UN's atomic watchdog agency said. The International Atomic Energy Agency said its team was aware of an explosion at training center next to the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. It said it was informed at the blast was from a drone attack, but gave no further details. The agency's information presumably came from Russians who have occupied and run the plant since the war's years. The Zaporizhia faculty is one of the 10 biggest nuclear plants in the world. Fighting in the southern part of Ukraine, where it is located, has raised the specter of a potential nuclear disaster like the one at Chernobyl in 1986, where a reactor exploded and across a vast area. Neither Russia nor Ukraine in recent months has been able to make significant advances along the 1,000-kilometer frontline crossing. Eastern and southern Ukraine drones, artillery, and missiles have featured heavily in what has become a war of attrition. Russia and Ukraine have frequently traded accusations over the Zaporizhia plant. On Monday, Moscow alleged Ukraine was behind drone attacks on the facility a day before, and Kyiv accused Russia of disinformation tactics. The IAEA reported Sunday that its inspectors had confirmed the physical impact of drone detonations and watched as Russian troops engaged what appeared to be an approaching drone. Energoatom, the Ukraine nuclear plant operator, blasted Russia's latest allegations in a statement Tuesday. It accused Moscow of publishing propaganda and false statements to manipulate government public opinion against Ukraine. France's foreign minister says his country influence, including threats of sanctions to force Israel to open crossings with Gaza for vital humanitarian aid to reach Palestinians. France was the first country to propose European Union sanctions against violent Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank. Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné said in an interview Tuesday with French broadcasters. He added, "We have multiple ways to utilize our influence. Obviously, we can provide more sanctions to let humanitarian aid convoys cross checkpoints and reach people in Gaza." Séjourné did not elaborate on what kind of sanctions he was referring to. It is highly unlikely that France would impose any eventual sanctions without broader EU support, and the EU has been divided over policy towards Israel. Japanese Prime Minister began a much-anticipated visit to Washington on Tuesday that sparked about provocative Chinese military action in the Pacific and a rare moment of public difference between the two nations over a Japanese company's plan to buy an iconic U.S. company. Kishida and his wife stepped by the White House Tuesday evening ahead of Wednesday's official visit and formal state dinner as President Joe Biden looks to celebrate with a decades-long ally he sees as the cornerstone of his Indo-Pacific policy. Kishida will be the fifth world leader honored by Biden with a state dinner since he took office in 2021. The two shook hands and First Lady Jill Biden embraced Kishida's wife, Yuko. The first foursome posed for a photo and briefly toured the grounds before heading to an upscale seafood restaurant, Black Salt, for dinner. The Bidens were presenting the Prime Minister with a three-legged table handmade by a Japanese-American-owned company. The President was also gifting Kishida a custom-framed two-volume LP set autographed by Billy Joel. Joe Biden was giving Yuko Kishida a soccer ball signed by the U.S. women's national team and the Japanese women's national team. Ahead of the White House visit, Kishida laid a wreath at Arlington National Cemetery on Tuesday and stopped by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and met with Microsoft's Vice Chairman and President Brad Smith. Biden and Kishida on Wednesday will hold talks and take part in a joint news conference before Biden feeds the Japanese leader with the state dinner in the East Room. The Prime Minister has also been invited to address a joint meeting of Congress. On Thursday, he will be just the second Japanese leader to address the body. Shinzo Abe gave a speech to Congress in 2015. The visit comes after Biden announced last month that he opposes the planned sale of U.S. Steel to Nippon Steel of Japan, exposing a marked rift in the very moment the two leaders aim to reinforce it. Biden argued in announcing his opposition that the U.S. needs to maintain strong American steel, companies powered by American steel workers. You are watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We will be back after this break.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all your bits on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN. From the line across the
Welcome back. This is the International News on Atlantic Television Network. Now the rest of our stories. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Tuesday said Israel has not apprised the U.S. of any specific date for the start of a major offensive into the southern Gaza city of Rafah, but added that American and Israeli officials remained in contact to try to ensure that any kind of major military operation doesn't do real harm to civilians. Blinken spoke a day after Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu vowed that a date has been set to invade Rafah. The city is filled whom are displaced from other parts of the Gaza Strip. The United States, Israel's closest ally, has said a ground operation into Rafah would be a mistake and has demanded to see a credible plan to protect civilians. Washington has also been applying pressure on Israel to improve humanitarian aid to Gaza, where half the population is starving and on the brink of famine due to Israel's tight restrictions on allowing aid trucks through. We are looking at a number of critical things that need to happen in the coming days, Blinken said, referring to recent Israeli announcement on the opening of a new aid routes into Gaza and more effective efforts to avoid casualties to both civilians and humanitarian relief workers. But what matters is results and sustained results, and this is what we will be looking at very carefully in the days ahead. That includes getting assistance in and distributed to all of the territory, not just in the south or in the central Gaza. It has to get to the north as well, he said. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told Congress Tuesday that pressure on Israel to improve humanitarian aid to Gaza appears to be working, but he said more must be done and it remains to be seen if the improvement will continue. It clearly had an effect. We will have seen changes in behavior, and we have seen more humanitarian assistance being pushed into Gaza, Austin said in a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing. Hopefully that trend will continue. Austin's comments came during a session that was interrupted several times by protesters shouting at him to stop sending weapons to Israel. Stop the genocide, they said, as they lifted their hands stained in red in the air. A number of senators also decided the civilian casualty, saying the administration needs to do more to press Israel to protect the population in Gaza. In response, Austin said he broke with his Israeli counterpart, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, on Monday, and that he repeated the U.S. insistence that Israel must move civilians out of the battle space in Gaza and properly care for them. Austin and Joint Chiefs Chairman General C.Q. Brown Jr. were testifying on Capitol Hill about the Pentagon's $850 billion budget for 2025. Several family members of hostages held by Hamas met with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris at the White House on Tuesday and urged for a deal that would release their loved ones and implement a temporary ceasefire in Gaza. The only hope for peace is through the release of all the hostages now, said Jonathan Dekel Chen, the father of American hostage Shagui Dekel Chen, on a potential hostage agreement. Dekel Chen stressed that the world is waiting for Hamas to get to yes. Rachel Goldberg, the mother of American hostage Hirsch Goldberg, Pauline, called the meeting with Harris very productive. She expressed gratitude to the White House and lawmakers for their support, but added, "We need good results. We need our people home. Yet you can believe as we do that is horrible, that innocent civilians in Gaza are suffering," Goldberg said, and at the same time, "You can also know that it is horrible and against international law for hostages to be held against their will." During the meeting, Harris emphasized that she and President Joe Biden have no higher priority than reuniting the hostages with their loved ones, according to a White House readout, as she gave an update on the administration's efforts on a hostage deal. U.S. President Joe Biden says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's approach to the war against Hamas is mistaken. Biden's remarks in an interview that aired late Tuesday, dipping an already growing rift between the two staunch allies over the war. Now in its 7th month, those agreements have compounded over the worsening humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. Israel's expected offense in the city of Rafah and Israel's recent strike on a humanitarian convoy which killed 7 aid workers and most of them foreigners. What he is doing is a mistake. I don't agree with this approach, Biden told U.S. Spanish language broadcaster Univision in an interview conducted on April 3rd, 2 days after the strike on the World Central Kitchen Aid Convoy. He was responding to a question about whether Netanyahu was letting political consideration steer his decision making in the war. Biden said Israel should agree to a ceasefire, flood beleaguered Gaza with aid for the next 6 to 8 weeks, and allow regional countries to help distribute the aid. It should be done now, he said. The Biden administration was outspoken in its support for Israel following the October 7 Hamas attack, but in recent weeks has stepped up criticism of Israel's approach to the war. Israel and Hamas are holding talks meant to bring about a ceasefire in exchange for the release of hostages, although the sides still disagree on key terms of a deal. Now to Australian news. Mexico released security camera video Tuesday on the moments when Ecuadorian authorities forced their way into Mexico's embassy, pushed a Mexican diplomat to the ground, and carried out Ecuador's former vice president, who had been holed up there. The action Friday night greatly escalated tensions between the two countries, which had already been tussling since ex-vice president George Glass, a convicted criminal and fugitive, took refuge at Mexico's embassy in December. Ecuadorian police scaled the embassy walls and broke into the building Friday. Roberto Canseco, Mexico's head of consular affairs and the highest-ranking diplomat present since Ecuador expelled the ambassador earlier in the week, tried to keep them from entering, even pushing a large cabinet in front of a door. But police restrained him and pushed him to the floor as they carried Glass out. Mexico, as well as experts, say it appeared to be a blatant violation of international accords. Mexico broke off diplomatic relations with the country in response. Leaders across Latin America condemned Ecuador's actions as a violation of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. At his daily news briefing Tuesday, Mexico President Andrés Manuel López Obrador played the security video and said it showed the authoritarian and violent way police had raided the embassy. López Obrador criticized North American allies Canada and the United States for what he said was not speaking out forcefully enough against the raid. Mexico has said it plans to file formal complaints with the International Court of Justice. Later Tuesday, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan appeared to voice a stronger rejection of Ecuador's actions. We condemn this violation of the Vienna Convention on the Diplomatic Relations, including the use of force against embassy officials. Sullivan said during Tuesday's press briefing, "We've reviewed the security camera footage from the Mexican embassy and believe these actions were wrong." The Ecuadorian government disregarded its obligation under international law as a host state to respect the inviolability of diplomatic missions and jeopardize the foundation of basic diplomatic norms and relationships. And that's the international news for today. Before we go, another look at the major stories. From Iran, Supreme Leader again pledges retaliation against Israel. China, fire in residential building killed 5 people. Italy, search continues after blast kills 3 workers. United States, Japanese Prime Minister visits Washington. Australia, health experts call for sugar reduction in drinks. I am Valentina Lawrence. Thank you for watching. You can follow us on all our social media platforms on X, Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, Instagram, Atlantic TV Network, or you can watch us live on our website, Atlantic TV Network, atlanticnetwork.tv. Do remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Thank you. Have a lovely afternoon.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only around 8 AM.